YouTubers, Fortune Cookie 45 LC coming to you from the Hotlet Zone, and as you know, our range is a very fine local range, allows videotaping, and the staff there is very friendly, stern but friendly, and the shooting community there is exceptional. And today we went to a different range that does not allow videotaping. Now before you're too hard on this range, they have a lot of activities and matches and a lot of shooting activities going on. There's 3-gun matches, PPC shooting with pistols and rifle, black powder events, classic PPC, high power rifle shooting, cowboy action shooting, a very picturesque place to shoot. So today we couldn't do a video, but we compared the Marlin Model 60 with the Ruger 1022. These are the two leading .22 rifles in America. And the question is, which one would you get? Now these groups were shot at 50 yards from sandbag rest, and the target on the left-hand side was shot with the Marlin Model 60, on the right the Ruger 1022. This group was shot with a cheap Federal bulk that I have on reserve. So was this group here, shot with a Federal bulk. In a direct comparison, we shot CCI Minimags, my last supply, with the Model 60 and with the Ruger 1022, about the same size group. This one here was shot with PMC Sidewinder high velocity, and so was this one with the 1022. Pretty much the same size with the exception of one flyer. Then we shot PMC Target standard velocity with the Marlin Model 60 and with the Ruger 1022. Now it might seem to you that these groups by the 1022 are just a little bit smaller than the groups shot by the Marlin Model 60, but we have to bear into consideration that the 1022 has a 1-inch Simmons 3:9 scope on there with a 40mm objective lens, and the Model 60 has the old 7/8 inch Weaver V22A, and it has the more or less straight tube. But the most important thing is that all the groups are consistent, the point of impact is pretty consistent, and there was no malfunctions whatsoever with high velocity or standard velocity ammo in either rifle. I happen to have another 3:9 power scope that I could put on this Marlin Model 60. Already has the 22 tip-off mounts on there, but I'm not going to do it. This little V22A happens to be a very nice scope. I don't mind using it or leaving it on there. Now this range is always fun to pick up empty steel casings from the ground and line them up on the wooden target supports and use rifles to pick them off. So I put 3 steel 7.62 by 54 R cases on the left of my target and shot them with the Marlin Model 60, and then 3 more on the right and shot them with the 1022 to see how many shots it would take to take them down. Now, YouTubers, I wouldn't shoot brass casings, but steel just fine to shoot. And why do I do that? It's because the approximation of shooting at small game. Well, YouTubers, sorry to report that both rifles hit 3 casings with 5 shots. No advantage. However, there was this 19-year-old young shooter next to me, and I heard him talking to this other gentleman that had brought him, and he's a college student, and he's majoring in environmental engineering. And so the discussion was, what kind of gun do you want to get? And he said, well, I'm on a budget because I'm still a student in college, and so all I can afford is a 22. I'd like to get a 1022 Ruger. Well, this shooter was shooting the other gentleman's Smith & Wesson AR-22, And that's a pretty expensive gun from what I can remember, somewhere around $500. You can get 2 Ruger 1022s or almost 3 Marlin Model 60s with that. Well, I handed him my 1022 and I said, you want to try something fun? You see those empty casings next to my target? Take the 1022 and now here's a magazine full of lead bullets. I told him that because he's in the environmental engineering, might be important later on. I showed him how to focus the scope so that's good for his eyes. And then loaded up and he proceeded to shoot the casings and he hit 3 of them with 4 shots. 4 shots, not 5 but 4. Well, that's what the young eyes do. You should have seen his smiles. Later on, I picked up some of the empties that he had hit and there was one that was folded in half from the 22 hit. And I told him 22 long rifles, not anything to be trifled with. Really tore those cases up. Sure, you can make the case that the Ruger 1022 has tons of aftermarket parts for it, so you can modify it to your heart's content, and that certainly is true. But you could also say that the Marlin Model 60 is about $60 less expensive than the Ruger, and you don't really have to modify this, just leave it the way it is. So YouTubers, this is the same kind of thing as trying to compare the Remington 870 12-gauge shotgun with the Mossberg 500 12-gauge shotgun. You just can't compare them. They're both excellent. Well, here, the Marlin Model 60 and the Ruger 1022 are both excellent 22 rifles. Can't go wrong with either one. And it boils down to your own preference, and if you can't decide between the two of them, just get them both. Bye for now.